Truth API, a subscription service giving businesses and trading firms a first look at posts from the president and other high-profile accounts.
What you talking about, Mr. D?
The price tag reportedly up to $100,000 a month. Critics are raising alarms because that head start means paying customers see market-moving statements from a sitting president before the public does.
Right.
Good day, good people. My name is Quentin. I'm an independent and I'm a male. Welcome to the Independent Mail. Today, I just have a quick question for you guys. How do we square being tough on fraud when it comes to Medicaid and child care fraud in blue states, but the perceived market manipulation and insider trading via proxy and the pardoning of crypto business associates seem to go unnoticed?
What?
The premise of this hearing is selective outrage about fraud. Because if my Republican colleagues actually cared about stopping fraud, they would not be defending the one president in modern history who is systematically tearing down the institutions designed to prevent it. The one president in history who has pardoned fraudster after fraudster after fraudster.
Over the course of Trump's second term, he seemed to have had a knack of making social media posts about certain stocks and securities that subsequently has the market react. Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent seemed to be playing on this same tactic in use of the Iranian war to move oil securities. Recently, I've Had It podcasts covered this. Let's check it out right here.
And one of the worst is Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent is the Treasury Secretary, and he has been manipulating the markets with the Iran war.
Strategery.
Pop this up. Matt Stoller posts an article, and the article says, Bessent says there may be deal Tuesday or Wednesday to open Strait of Hormuz with freedom of movement. Matt Stoller responds to this and says, Bessent said this last week and it wasn't true, but the price of oil moved anyway. I guess we've just normalized market rigging.
Also, why are there crickets towards the president seeming to be monetizing the office yet again by selling early access to social media posts by him and other prominent market movers? This was covered by PBS in case you missed it. Let's check that one out.
President Trump is selling early access to his social media posts. His company recently launched Truth API, a subscription service giving businesses and trading firms a first look at posts from the president and other high-profile accounts.
What you talking about, Mr. D?
The price tag reportedly up to $100,000 a month. Critics are raising alarms because that head start means paying customers see market-moving statements from a sitting president before the public does.
Right.
For more, we're joined now by Bobby Allen, technology correspondent for NPR.
I talked to many people who study Wall Street and, former SEC enforcers who said, no, this is not public information because the very service is offering it to people before the rest of the world. I mean, that is the value add. You can get Trump's posts before anyone else. So, experts told me that is the definition of material non-public information. And one executive at a very large Wall Street firm told me if this was any other administration, this would be considered criminal. And I put that to the Trump media spokesperson, and she said that is absurd.
So overall, what am I missing here? How is the mantra of tough on fraud and corruption both existing in the same universe? If you happen to know the answer to this, please drop the answer in the comments. As always, until next time, peace and stay informed.
Right, so when the subroutine compounds the interest, right, it uses all these extra decimal places that just get rounded off. So we simplified the whole thing, and we round them all down and just drop the remainder into an account that we opened.
So you're stealing?
Good day, good people. Have you all noticed that lately a lot of kitchen table issues have become partisan? And what I mean by kitchen table issues, I mean things that it didn't matter what side of the aisle you were on. If it was an issue / and or problem, both sides could agree that there was an issue and or problem. The only disagreement would be what would be the course of action or how to go about fixing this said problem. Over the recent years, some of these almost no-brainer issues have become extremely partisan. For instance, justice. Let's take the DOJ for instance. This is a entity, right, that one in our nation would think could be, it should be nonpartisan. We should all want justice to the best of that ability. And what we're finding is that justice has become extremely partisan over the last few years. For instance, if you were a January 6er and you were climbing all over the Capitol, assaulting police officers, in some cases, not all of them, but we do know some of them did. And, as well as using the restroom all over the place. If you were prosecuted for that during the Biden administration, meaning that when the Dems were in control, then they were weaponizing the Justice Department for prosecuting these people doing things that many of us saw on television. On the flip side, now we have the Justice Department going after a lot of individuals that just coincidentally seem to have been on President Trump's S list. People like Comey, people like Letitia James, individuals that were just doing the job they were hired to do, but because that happened to have been against the president, it seems that the DOJ has been weaponized against them. So these is just an instance of how justice itself, something that's supposed to be blind and on the scales, has become extremely partisan. So it's like you don't even know what to feel about justice anymore. Another thing, the economy, right? Another kitchen, probably the biggest kitchen table issue, is also extremely partisan at this point. If you recall, not that long ago, like 18 months ago, 24 months ago, campaign trail 2024, all we heard all that time period leading up to the election was a lot about the economy. Specifically, you would have people drill down about the costs of eggs and milk. That's all we heard about was eggs and milk going into the 2024 election cycle. And it's understandable. That is a kitchen table issue, kitchen table item. So it should be front and center. Problem is, you see today, you have a lot on the right that have either nothing to say or a lot of justification for gas prices being well above what they complained about in the 2020s, right? Between 2020 and 2024, when Biden got out of office, when we were doing the whole pandemic recovery, because Biden's economy always exists in a vacuum that is minus pandemic recovery. It's so convenient and it's funny. But anyway, and the reason why it is convenient and it's funny because it has become partisan. Right? So it's partisan. When our party does something, it's fine. When your party does it, then it's bad. We need to get you. Instead of being like, this is an issue. An issue is an issue and it needs to be dealt with regardless of who's doing it or whose watch is on. So what is the next issue that usually would be a no-brainer for us to eradicate, but has become now increasingly partisan? Fraud. Yeah, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Fraud is now partisan AF, something that we as citizens in America, really globally, but especially here in America, we have so much capitalism and so much commerce going on. You would think that on both sides of the aisle, we would all detest fraud. And just for a little color, I am very animated about fraud because all of the two people that watch this channel on a regular basis. You guys know that I work for a mergers and acquisition firm. Some of you know I have financial licenses, blah, 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 in retirement stuff. I'm not a day trader, but you don't know what I do for this merger and acquisition firm. And I actually work in the anti-money laundering fraud compliance department. So fraud has been something I've been into for about 11 or 12 years now. And I will tell you this, I see it all over the place. And I really don't give two damns of who's doing it.
Oh, snap.
It all needs to be snuffed out, prosecuted, and systems need to be made in place to prevent abuses from happening further. The reason for this is because fraud affects us in so many ways. Number one, it wastes taxpayers' dollars. Nobody's dollars needs to be wasted at this point, all right? Especially when a lot of these programs are under attack because the wealthier individuals in the country don't want to be paying taxes in the first place. And so they definitely don't want to be throwing it into these quote unquote social systems that are heavily and highly abused. Number two, when these systems are under fraud like this or have been attacked because of vulnerabilities, which allows them to be manipulated and exploited, what it does is it actually also hurts the people that need said service. All right. So it steals from the taxpayer and it takes services away from the individuals that actually need it. And the last thing it does is it causes inconvenience to us as citizens. A lot of times this is in time itself. Let's just take, I hate to say it, but let's take Walmart for instance. Walmart shopping sucks because of loss prevention. You can't get basic items in Walmart without waiting on an employee to come open it up from a case. And I'm saying this as somebody that had this happen today. Was over at Walmart, needed some Benadryl and some batteries, 2 B words. And I had to wait for somebody to open the damn case for both of them. Like they were Fabergé eggs. Batteries, Benadryl, behind glass cases. Anyway, so when there's too much fraud and theft, it inconveniences the rest of us citizens that have nothing to do with it. And sometimes, but particularly financial institutions, they'll cut out a service altogether if it's exploited too much and they can't cut off the vulnerability. So anyway, that's the reason why I'm definitely passionate about fraud detection, fraud deterrence, and fraud prosecutions, because I am aware of what fraud actually does on a bigger scale. So how has fraud become partisan, so to speak, so much in today's age? Well, part of the reason I say this is because particularly in blue states, they have had some situations where a lot of their health programs, Medicare programs, child care programs, et cetera, a lot of safety net programs have been exploited and abused, and they have been done to an extent where the dollar amount / the damages are way too high. And I mean, come on, we know theoretically $1 is way too high, but what I'm talking about, things reaching the hundreds of millions, right? And in often cases, they've done too little, too late, right? Now, in let's say Minnesota, for instance, because they've been the poster child of this, and a lot of the reason is because there's been a immigrant population at play, Somalians, that have been involved in some of the fraud that took place against, want to say, was it Medicaid? Or maybe the kids program. But anyway, there was like the biggest one was like 250 million. It was Feeding the Families program or something like that. It was a lady named Amy Brock and some other dudes that were behind it. I think Amy's actually facing sentencing this week. So let's get to it. Alrighty, gonna hop over here to the United States Attorney's Office, District of Minnesota. All right, press release. What do we have here? Federal jury finds Feeding Our Future mastermind and co-defendant guilty in $250 million pandemic fraud scheme. All right, we're going to jump around here, see who the actors are. We've got Amy Bach and Salim, I doubt it's said, let's say it's Syed, took advantage of COVID-19 pandemic to carry out a massive fraud scheme that stole money meant to feed children, said acting U.S. Attorney Lisa D. Kirkpatrick. All right. The defendants falsely claimed to have served 91 million meals, for which they fraudulently received $250 million in federal funds. The money did not go to feed kids. Instead, it was used to fund their lavish lifestyles. Today's verdict sends a message to the community that fraud against the government will not be tolerated. And anyway, Minnesota had been investigating a lot of these instances and had trials going on about 2 years prior to the blockbuster reporting from Nick Shirley, where he was, physically going to some of these daycare centers. But the problem was, even the fact that they had already been conducting investigations and had some people in court, it still was too little too late. Like, it took too long, too large of dollar amounts to trigger investigations or even like spot checks. And because I remember doing a video on this and going into detail trying to find out what the actual things were that went into play leading up to this. And one of the things a couple of things that I found interesting was that a lot of times these buildings these companies that would sign up to do work for these programs in order to be, compensated later, they would have addresses that would like just be PO boxes or some house or something that doesn't make sense to be doing as much business as that they said that they were doing. And particularly that one that Amy Brock was a part of in Minnesota, the Feeding the Family situation. They literally were turning in invoices saying that they were feeding 3,000 people a day, 7 days a week. That's what these people were doing. They were serving up 21,000 meals per week. Don't you think you need to go see what that operation looks like? Maybe. So that's the kind of stuff that was happening, on the left and things under left-led states. And it seemed to be a lack of wanting to address those particular situations on the scale that they needed to be addressed, as to not highlight a particular aspect of their constituency too much. And in my opinion, you can't do that. If something's being exploited, then it needs to be snuffed out and it needs to be eradicated. Now, on the flip side, well, what kind of gripe would I have on the GOP? Well, the GOP seems to only be concerned about fraud when it's conducted by immigrant minorities or being done in a blue state. If it's anything else, they seem to not even be aware of it, or they don't care. I don't know which one it is, but let's take Brett Favre, for instance. Largest fraud case in freaking Mississippi state history. Didn't see any Republicans up in arms about that, wanting him to get prosecuted for the fullest extent of the law. None of that. Didn't seem to be a big issue. The other thing that really cracks me up, that I haven't seen any Republicans outwardly or publicly criticize or say anything about, is President Trump's appearance to have a pay-for-play situation going on with these pardons. I mean, a lot of times people that have been pardoned, there are probably hundreds at this point. Yeah, of course there are hundreds. There are multiple hundreds at this point. And a lot of them seem to have coincidentally been Trump supporters or Trump business affiliates. And we're talking about people like the Binance CEO and the Chrisleys, right? There's a whole list of people that have been pardoned, and some of these white collar crimes, their damages are also totaling in the billions. And for some reason, there's no outcry about these people not facing the consequence for defrauding folks. These are the security fraud, tax fraud. There's all kinds of fraud in here. And for some reason, there's no outrage about it.
I want your audience to understand this is a top priority for the administration. The Department of Justice, as we speak, is continuing to execute search warrants and subpoenas. People will be in handcuffs.
But what we're seeing today, and the premise of this hearing, is selective outrage about fraud. Because if my Republican colleagues actually cared about stopping fraud, they would not be defending the one president in modern history who is systematically tearing down the institutions designed to prevent it. The one president in history who has pardoned fraudster after fraudster after fraudster.
Break down how Binance works, who is Zhao and what he was charged with.
Yeah, Binance is a cryptocurrency trading platform. It's one of the biggest in the world, if not the biggest in the world, but it's been unable to do business in the United States as a result of these guilty pleas against both CZ, as the founder goes by, and also the company itself. Binance pleaded guilty as well. It has been trying to get back into the U.S. market. CZ stepped down as the sort of titular head of the organization as a result of this guilty plea. But they have been making inroads with the Trump family, including doing a deal where Binance and the Emirati Sovereign Wealth Fund financed a $2 billion transaction using World Liberty Financial, the Trump family's crypto company. At the same time, CZ and the company were hiring lawyers and lobbyists with ties to the Trump administration with an eye towards getting this pardon, which is expected to allow him to, and Binance potentially, to enter the U.S. market in a potentially market reshaping move that, you know, could end up with producing a lot of money for the Trump family through this World Liberty Financial deal, and also just shaking up the cryptocurrency market in the United States.
So if there is a Medicaid, health, or daycare fraud going on in a blue state conducted by minority immigrants that total into the hundreds of millions of dollars, GOP seems to be in an uproar. But if it's a bunch of white collar crimes that also total in the hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes billions, and they're pardoned by the president that happens to be their party person right now, crickets. So in my opinion, there's no place for that. All of the fraud needs to be eradicated. For what reasons? The reasons I laid out before. It wastes tax dollars. The people that actually need the services don't get it. And it inconveniences us, the citizens that don't have anything to do with the stuff in the first place. And so where are we now? Well, now we have Vice President JD, I might be speaking a bit early, huh? But we have Vice President JD Vance, and he is now the head of a fraud task force. And he's already issued warnings to blue states that arrests could be coming over, exploited Medicaid, healthcare systems, things of that nature.
Now, my exclusive interview with Vice President JD Vance. Vice President JD Vance, thank you so much for being here today.
Of course.
Based on some state expert estimates we have seen, going back to 2019, the California State Medi-Cal program alone could have cost taxpayers $146 billion with a B in fraud.
Yep.
That's an extraordinary number. Could this be, that's one program, one state, $1 trillion fraud epidemic in the country?
I mean, we don't really know how bad the fraud problem is, because until Donald Trump became president, nobody actually took a serious look at it. It could be hundreds of billions of dollars. It could be $1 trillion. What we do know is that a lot of Americans are being taken advantage of. And whatever the scale is, it's big enough to really matter. And I think to make a significant hit, meaning American taxpayers could be paying less taxes. We could be saving more money. And I always try to remind people of this, Kaylee. There really are two costs and two victims. One is taxpayers getting fleeced, whether it's $100 billion or $1 trillion. That's a lot of money. But it's also, there are these programs that people in my family that I have benefited from that are meant to provide food to low-income kids, are meant to ensure that if you can't afford a doctor, you can still have access to medical care. Those programs are going to be destroyed by the fraudsters.
But why is this warning to blue states? Like, why is this not just a generic warning to fraudsters abroad? If you're committing fraud and we catch you, you will be prosecuted to the full. I don't understand why the selective warning. And so that's why I feel like this whole fraud issue, regardless of where it's happening or what element of it is being exploited, it doesn't seem like it's really being taken seriously unless it's the other guy that's doing it. So you guys let me know what you think about this current fraud situation. Do you think it's politicized? Do you think it's being weaponized? Do you think it's getting the actual attention that it needs by government as a whole, both parties, left and right? Let me know in the comments. And till next time, you guys, peace. Stay informed.